everyone, and welcome back to the Wayback When podcast. This is episode 3 with your hosts, me, Hannah, and
Maria.
One day we'll get that in time and it won't be delayed.
Yeah.
One day we'll be able to do it. Anyway, welcome everyone. This is episode 3,
Hello.
as I just mentioned, and this is our first of 2 Celebrating Women podcasts. This episode should be going up on the 3rd of March, and then episode 4 will be on the 10th of March, and falling in between those dates is International Women's Day. So we've decided that episode 3 and 4 are basically going to be about celebrating women. And so for this episode, I'm just going to hand straight over to Maria, because this is sort of, again, one of like her ones. This is like her vibe. So yeah, I'm just going to hand over to you to introduce what we're doing today.
Okay, so originally I had planned to do the Trojan women, but once I had done my plan, I realised it's quite a lot of Greek women, like instead of Trojan. Well, there's one Trojan woman, but like she's not the main character in the story. So basically I'm just talking about 4 main women in the Iliad and some other tragedies that are key in Greek culture.
Yeah, she didn't tell me that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't change anything, but it's just, I noticed 3 of them are Greek, 1 of them's Trojan. So.
Okay, cool. So, shall we do them one by one? How have like you sort of like arranged, it's like, are we talking about them one at a time, or are you like sort of touching on all of them?
All of their stories are intertwined, obviously, so I'll explain some information, like I'll give some background context, and then I'll just explain the figures, how I've arranged it, if that's fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So do you want to just like go for it?
Okay, so context, background. Trojan War. It's a thing, yeah? We all know about the Trojan War, hopefully. If you don't, I'll explain it now. Okay, so basically there's these 3 goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. And then there's another goddess called Eris, who is the goddess of discord, not the app, like chaos.
Yeah.
So she doesn't get invited to this wedding. So she's like, right, I didn't get invited to the wedding, I'm going to cause havoc. So what she does is she gets this golden apple and says, whoever gets to keep this apple is the most beautiful goddess. And all the other goddesses are kind of like, we don't really care, because they all think Aphrodite's going to get it. And Athena and Hera are like, hey, wait, I'm just as beautiful as Aphrodite, which causes problems in every single form of mythology. So then they all look at Zeus and like, Zeus, you decide. You know us all the best. Not really, but you know. And he's like, I'm not deciding between my wife, my aunt, and my daughter. That's just not happening. So, because he's scared of all 3 of them, let's be honest. Obviously. And he decides, I'm just going to choose some teenager instead to choose. And this teenager happens to be Paris of Troy, who I loathe entirely. I hate that man so much. But basically, he gets presented with these 3 goddesses, and Hermes and Zeus are like, you can choose which one you want to pick to keep the golden apple. And so Hera's like, I will make you the most powerful man on earth, you will be the most powerful king. So he goes to choose Hera. And then Athena's like, wait, I will make you the most treasured soldier, you will never fail in battle, you will always be victorious. He goes to choose Athena. And then Aphrodite is like, wait, I'll give you the most beautiful woman in the entire world. So he chooses Aphrodite, he gives the apple to Aphrodite. And this majorly like pisses off Hera and Athena, because Hera's the queen, so she expected it to go to her. And Athena just has a giant ego, so she expected it to go to her. And Paris chooses Aphrodite, and then some other stuff happens that's not important for the story. And he ends up he's a prince. So he goes with his brother Hector to Sparta, which I'm sure people know of. And the king of Sparta is Menelaus. And Menelaus' wife is Helen of Troy. Well, Helen of Sparta at the time. Yeah. And he sees Helen and he knows it's her. He knows that's the woman that Aphrodite promised to him. Obviously, Helen doesn't really know that she's promised to Paris now. But Aphrodite is kind of like, you have to do it. I'm the goddess of love and relationships and all that. So it's basically Aphrodite's fault that the Trojan War happens. So then Paris kidnaps Helen, brings her back to Troy. Hector's like, right, you fucked up. And then, oh my god, it gets so much more complicated. Menelaus is like, right, you kidnapped my wife. So I'm gonna have to go do something about it. So he calls up his brother Agamemnon and is like, hey, bro, can you help me? Because we have a pact. All the kings of Greece have a pact. Agamemnon is the king of Mycenae.
This is what I'm familiar with. This, because pact.
This is in some of Achilles.
Yeah.
So
they all swore that they protect Helen, didn't they?
Helen, yeah. Mm-hmm. They all had like this oath that whoever married Helen, they'd all protect her, basically. So then Agamemnon calls up Odysseus and is like, right, you gotta help as well. And then Diomedes, and then Nestor, and then a couple of other guys. They're not really important to this particular story. And they all end up going to fight the Trojan War. So this is where our story starts. So Agamemnon, I hope I'm saying that right,
I think so.
has this wife called Clytemnestra. I love this woman so much. Clytemnestra is Helen's older sister, I believe. So the two sisters married the two brothers. So Agamemnon and Menelaus are brothers, and Helen and Clytemnestra are sisters, and they both married each other, if you understand. So, I'm out of breath. I'm talking too much. So, yeah, that's what happens. Just for some background, Clytemnestra and Agamemnon have, I'm gonna say 3 kids, because in different tragedies they have like 4, but like it's most common that they have 3 kids, which is Electra, Iphigenia, and Orestes. I believe that's his name. I can't pronounce it.
They had so much cooler names back then.
I know. I'm so naming my child Iphigenia.
Oh, God.
Like, 100%. Iphigenia and Medea. Yeah. So, yeah, they have 3 kids. Iphigenia is the eldest. I believe Electra is the middle child. And then Orestes is the youngest son of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra.
So is she your first woman, or the Iliad?
Okay, so I'll be talking about Electra, Iphigenia, and Clytemnestra.
Right, okay.
Because they're 3 different characters, but their stories are all intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So basically, big problem, they go to sail to Troy. I'm sure you know this from some Achilles. They go to sail to Troy, and basically one of the kings accidentally kills one of Artemis's sacred animals. Some stories it's a hare, some stories it's a stag. And Artemis is like, not right. She's like, right, that's not happening. I'm getting rid of all the wind. And obviously you can't sail across an ocean without wind. You're not going to move. So Artemis doesn't allow them to leave Greece and get to Troy. So Agamemnon and the rest of the kings are like, right, we'll go send a priest to go talk to Artemis and see what she wants in exchange for winds. Oh my god, this part of the story annoys me so much. So what happens is the priest goes, talks to Artemis, and he's like, hey, what do you want? We'll do whatever you want in order for us to gain victory over Troy and get Helen back. And Artemis is like, I want Agamemnon's eldest daughter. I want you to sacrifice her in my name, and then you can go sail to Troy.
Bit harsh.
And at first, I know, it's like such a high standard. Like
calm
they
down.
killed an animal, you got rid of their wind, so now they have to kill a child, basically.
Lovely.
Lovely. So Agamemnon's a bit hesitant. He's like, I don't really want to slit my daughter's throat. It's a bit much. And Artemis is like, fine, we'll just leave Helen in Troy and then accept defeat. And Agamemnon's like, right, no, I don't do that. And he agrees. So this is where I start talking about Clytemnestra and Iphigenia. And Electra, obviously, plays into the later story. Sorry, I'm out of breath.
It's totally fine.
So Agamemnon calls up his wife, like writes her a little letter. He's like, hey, wifey, I have Achilles here, my best mate. Me and Achilles are BFFs. They hate each other, basically. Yeah. Achilles keeps, like, when I read the Iliad, Achilles' number one insult for Agamemnon was calling him some sort of dog. He was like king of dogs, dog heart, dog face, like all the time.
That's mature.
Which is basically a different way of calling him a bitch, basically. Off track. So he writes his wife a little letter. It's like, hey, I want Iphigenia. She's like 15, 16. She's of age. She's ready to get married now. I have Achilles with me. Why don't you come to Greece? We'll get married before we go fight the war. They'll get married before they go fight the war. And then Iphigenia will be with the best of my fighters. She'll be happy and all that. And Clytemnestra is like, okay, sure. We've been needing to marry this girl off for a while because she's of age and she's a princess. She agrees. Clytemnestra is like, right, okay, sure. Has anyone seen where this is going? Because this is not, I don't like this. So they arrive in Greece. I think they sail from Sparta and, Agamemnon's family lives in Mycenae, which is quite far away from Sparta. So they travel from Mycenae to Sparta, and Iphigenia and Clytemnestra arrive, and she thinks she's getting married to Achilles. Achilles is nowhere to be found. Clytemnestra gets cut off from Iphigenia by Odysseus. Odysseus kind of like takes her into a different tent and is like, we'll wait here for the wedding preparations. Sorry. Agamemnon greets Iphigenia at an altar. A very suspicious looking altar, not a wedding altar, may I add. Yeah. And Achilles is nowhere to be seen. Like, he doesn't know anything about this. He's off being gay with Patroclus.
Yeah. I
can't breathe. Jesus Christ. Sorry. What was I saying? So then Iphigenia kind of figures out that she's about to get sacrificed. She starts putting up a big fight, and Agamemnon eventually just slits her throat and sacrifices
That's
her
really
to Artemis.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then Agamemnon's like, I have to win the war now because I've just sacrificed my daughter. If I've done that for nothing, then I hate everyone. Even though he hated everyone anyway. Yeah. So Clytemnestra realizes her daughter has been sacrificed without her consent, without her knowledge. And this is a big thing in Greek culture, well, back then anyway, ancient Greek culture, is that mothers, one of their main roles and one of the roles they were allowed to have was the preparation of their daughter's wedding, which Clytemnestra thought she was getting, but instead she got to plan a funeral.
Lovely. Wow.
Great.
Family drama.
Yeah. And this kind of like, Achilles eventually finds out. It depends on which tragedy or which translation you read. Sometimes he finds out from Odysseus. Sometimes he finds out from Clytemnestra. Sometimes he's actually there when she gets sacrificed. But yeah, they end up sailing to Troy. They win the war eventually after 10 years. Achilles dies.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Spoiler alert.
Mans couldn't wear boots is basically the problem. You have one weak spot in your entire body and you decide to wear virtually flip-flops. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Going to war and wearing flip-flops, good idea.
Yeah. So, in Troy, this is... Clytemnestra basically goes back to her home. She's with her daughter and her son. And yeah, okay. We're going to put them aside for a minute because I'm going to focus on the second female, which is
So
Cassandra.
That was our first one. So I do have questions. Yeah. So shall I go into the questions afterwards? Because they are quite broad, but I've got one, I think, for each individual, and then we'll cover the rest later. But what do you think is most interesting about that story? Like, why do you think it's... Because it's obviously quite a minor part of a much larger thing. Yeah. So why do you think they, like, sort of, like, zone in on that and, like, have to, and specify, like, that happened?
When's it mentioned? Like...
No, like, why... Do you believe that this is a really important part of the story? Do you think, like, this is, like, a really interesting part?
Yeah. This is actually one of my favourite parts of the whole Trojan War story in general. Mainly because I think it gives you such an insight on Agamemnon as a character.
Yeah.
Which he's such a key figure in the Trojan War and the Iliad in general. And how willing and how much he wanted to win. Like, he just would not accept defeat, would not accept that he could potentially lose a war to a city like Troy, which is, like, extremely small compared to the Greek kingdoms. And in ancient Greece, blood killings of the family is, like, one of the most heinous crimes you can commit. Because it's, like, in today's words, it's, like, sinful or whatever. You'd get sent to hell, which back then would be classed as the fields of punishment. But obviously it was Artemis asked him to do it, so it's not really a crime because the gods willed it to happen. But Agamemnon is so persistent and will not accept defeat to the point where he's willing to sacrifice and murder his favourite and eldest daughter in order to get this woman back.
A woman who wasn't even his wife, like...
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it makes you question, like, is this about his pride and wants to win? Or is this about, like, brotherly
100%.
loyalty? Or what?
I feel... Maybe, I think a portion of it is probably brotherly loyalty, but I don't think Agamemnon values family in this, like, as much as it seems he might have. Like... You can look at the Trojan War perspective from Agamemnon's sticking up for his brother. It's a family thing. It's not really, because if he's willing to sacrifice Iphigenia for the case of the war, I think he would be willing to do the same to Menelaus as well.
Yeah.
And probably vice versa. Although Menelaus is a bit of a bitch. Not gonna lie. So yeah, I just think Agamemnon's such a, like, Gryffindor character, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I get you. Like,
when I think of him, I think of Mad Eye Moody. That's such a terrible comparison. But it, like, to me, in my head, they're both so ambitious, but not in a way that they want to get things done. It's, in a way, it's pride. It's
and that's
to do with your reputation.
Boastful sort of nature to them. Like I sort of understand that better now that you've given it that analogy.
But yeah, I think that answered the question.
Yeah. Well, I'll go into the others later.
Okay.
If you want to go on to the next gown.
Yeah. So this is now a Trojan woman. Girl, technically she's a girl. And this plays into Agamemnon and Clytemnestra's story later as well. So these stories are all tied in just to make it make sense. Because I didn't want to do 4 completely divergent characters because that's a lot of context that you have to go through. And So Cassandra of Troy we're not sure where she is in the order of children, because obviously she's the daughter of King Priam and Queen Hecuba. They lead Troy. They have 50 sons and 50 daughters, so that's
kept busy.
A lot of kids. Yeah. Some of them aren't with each other, like they have kids with other people as well. But Cassandra is the daughter of the king and queen. She's often described as the most beautiful daughter, the most fair, and like she's described as having like white arms, which may sound weird now, but like back then being described as having white arms was like godly almost.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to describe that. But yeah, Cassandra is a extremely dedicated priestess of Apollo. Apollo is the patron god of Troy. He messes up a lot in the Trojan War.
Yeah,
actually,
just a bit.
Especially with Achilles. Yeah. So she's like a really dedicated priestess. She's extremely beautiful. She's kind of sworn off men because she's a priestess to Apollo. And she spends most of her time in the temple. She's very close with her family. Like, she's quite close with Hector, who's my favorite, by the way. And yeah, so basically she's so beautiful that Apollo looks down from Olympus at his temple and is like, hey, she's hella pretty. I'm gonna go spend some time with her.
Nice.
Which
How old
never
is she?
ends well. She's probably like, in the beginning, this is me guessing, she's probably a teenager. Like, because she's not young, because obviously priestesses had to be above a certain age. So she's probably like 16, 17, which isn't too bad. And Apollo is like, hey, you're pretty, I like you, I'm a god. And she's like awestruck. So then he's like, I will teach you the gift of prophecy in exchange for you to fulfill my desires. Now, we don't actually, like, it varies. It varies so much. Sometimes fulfill those desires are having kids with him. Sometimes it's just a kiss. Sometimes it's hanky-panky.
Yeah. Well, I think if it's mythology, it's probably hanky-panky, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Cassandra's like, sure, okay, I'll give you a chance because I really want to learn how to be a oracle. I want to be able to tell the future. It'll be cool. She'd be one of the high priestesses of Apollo. She'd have all this fame and stuff. She's already a princess, and now she'd be a high priestess who can tell the future as well, which is like hella cool. So Apollo teaches her the gift of prophecy and is like, right, you have to kiss me now. And she's like, no, not really.
You're right, mate. No thanks.
So she rejects Apollo. But keep in mind, she's already promised she would do whatever he was asking of her. And this is not something you do. If you promise something to a god, you keep that promise.
Yeah.
Because that god is not going to be pleased with you. But yeah. So he's like, right, fine, I'll curse you. And he basically curses her with every prophecy she will relay is true. Every single thing she says will happen.
Oof.
Everything is gonna happen. She sees it all day, every day. Prophecies at all times of everything.
So like, in theory, she could say, in a week's time, 100 chocolate bars
It would
delivered to my room. Is that... You see, why does she... That's not a bad thing, love. You can take advantage of that.
No. The bad thing is, that's not the bad thing. The bad thing is that no one will ever believe her prophecies. She can tell the future. She will always get it right. She can prophesy something, tell everyone, warn everyone about it, but no one will ever believe her. That's what she's cursed with. And obviously, as a princess of Troy, you can kind of see where this will play in for the Trojan War. So Cassandra tells her family, Troy is going to fall, someone's going to come into the city, Helen, and bring about our destruction. Blood is going to fill the streets of Troy. Troy is going to burn. We will be the last royal family, basically, of Troy. And her family thinks she's gone mad. They think she's crazy, think she's delusional. So they basically lock her up in this room, and she's not really allowed to do anything. This isn't in the Iliad. This comes from other sources, because obviously the Iliad only takes place like the last few days of the war.
My
voice is going. But Cassandra's prophesizing all this stuff. Helen shows up. Priam, the king, lets Helen stay. Cassandra's like, no, you have to send her back. No one believes her, obviously. She prophesies that something will come into the city filled with deceit, which will be the Trojan horse. And that will be the fall of the city. And basically everything she said comes true, and Troy falls, basically. The Greeks win. Troy falls. The queen, the queen doesn't die. The king gets killed. The queen gets sold into the spoils of war and stuff. This is also a really important part of Cassandra. Slight trigger warning, like mentions of assault. So Cassandra goes to Athena's temple. Keep in mind, Athena is one of the protectors of the Greeks, because obviously Paris was a Trojan. She goes to the temple of Athena, and she's on the altar. In ancient Greek culture, if you're in the midst of a war and you are at the altar of a temple, you have to leave that person, because they're under the protection of a god. Ajax the Lesser doesn't listen to this. So she's in the temple of Athena, and he basically rips her from the altar, which is like it's like a crime basically against the gods to do things, and he assaults her. I'm not going to go into detail about that. If you want to do further research on that, you can look up Ajax's assault of Cassandra. It's a play. It's also lots of art, which I don't really want to go into detail about it because it's very graphic and all that.
Well, we can leave links below if you want to do your research.
This eventually leads to Ajax's ship getting struck down by Athena later, because she is the protector of Greeks, but you've just assaulted somebody in her temple who is under her protection, who is a maiden. She basically curses Ajax, and he drowns in the ocean. On his way back from the Trojan War, which is really ironic.
Well
because
deserved.
Obviously. But he's just survived the whole Trojan War, and he can't keep it in his pants, so he gets drowned, basically. And now we're back kind of to Agamemnon. I'm going to pause in case you want to ask any questions about Cassandra or the Trojans before carry on.
So what happened to her?
Okay. I'm going to carry on with that, but that's also the end of Clytemnestra's story as well. That ties into Electra's story. So if you want to ask anything about...
Shall we keep going then?
Caught up. I feel like I've just word dumped everyone.
I'm getting you. Yeah.
Okay. My throat is so sore right now. But
this is our second podcast of the night. We just recorded episode 2 because we had to re-record it. So we are both. It's like 10:30 at the moment, so we're both quite tired. So
this information is quite like I'm quite well versed in the Trojan War, so this isn't like difficult or anything. So it's okay. Okay, so basically Cassandra, all the women of Troy, basically they don't really kill the women of Troy because, you know, in the spoils of war, like, you don't kill the women and children, you just keep them as your slaves, which is great. So they line up with the women of Troy. really good book recommendation for all this is 1,000 Ships. This is all mentioned in 1,000 Ships if you want to go read that, by Natalie Haynes. And basically they all get lined up and the kings get the first pick. Agamemnon gets to pick first because he's the king of kings. So he chooses Cassandra, and they all go back to Greece. The other women get chosen by different kings. Like, I'm not sure on the specifics. But yeah, they all get chosen by different kings, different soldiers, all that. So Cassandra goes back with Agamemnon to his home, Mycenae, I believe, yeah. And keep in mind, Clytemnestra's at home with her 2 remaining children, and she has had 10 years to carefully plan her revenge against Agamemnon. Yeah. And at this point, she's found a lover amongst all of this. So now she has a male lover who's also with her while Agamemnon was away, which is like a crime. Even though Agamemnon had people like Briseis and Chryses and all that, he's brought home his concubine Cassandra as well, which is normal for him, but because she's found a lover, it's not misogyny and all that. So Cassandra goes back with Agamemnon, and she is prophesized that she will die when she gets home. Not home, when she gets to Agamemnon's home, his kingdom. And he doesn't believe her because of the curse, etc., etc. So he arrives home and he's like, "Hey, wifey, I know I murdered our daughter 10 years ago, but like I've just won the war. Helen's back with Menelaus. You know, time to celebrate." And Clytemnestra's like, "Fine, okay, sure." Her lover's hiding in the broom closet. And yeah, basically. Also, there's like this thing in between. Like, I'm not sure. This isn't in the Iliad. This isn't in the story of Agamemnon. This is in some random Greek tragedy. Apparently, Cassandra had twins with Agamemnon. Like, but it's like only one Greek tragedy, so I don't think it's like happened. I don't know if any of this happened. But yeah, so Cassandra's at home and she's like, "Right, I'm about to get murdered." And Agamemnon's like, "Okay, sure, I'ma go take a bath." It's basically what happens. So he goes and has a bath. Clytemnestra fills the bath for him, all that lovely jubbly. And while he's in the bath, I don't know why Cassandra's there as well. Cassandra's there when he's having a bath, which is strange. Clytemnestra's just like pouring a bath for her husband and his servant girl. Yeah. So she draws a bath and Agamemnon's in the bath or whatever. And Clytemnestra goes, lets her lover out the wardrobe or whatever. Wherever he's hiding, I've forgotten where he hid. And Electra and her brother are eating dinner at this time in the front room, basically. Just like happily eating dinner. Their dad's home. Yay, my sister's murdered, but it's fine. So yeah, Clytemnestra goes and gets an axe. And she kills Agamemnon and Cassandra with the axe while they're in the bath. And her lover also helps.
Right. This sounds like some family drama. This sounds like an episode of EastEnders or Corrie.
But there's a really sweet moment in Agamemnon, which is written by a Greek philosopher, which I can't pronounce his name. Where there's a really sweet moment between Cassandra and Clytemnestra. It's the night before Clytemnestra kills Cassandra and Agamemnon. And basically, Cassandra knows that Clytemnestra is going to kill her. She's kind of accepted it. She doesn't put up like a fight or anything. And Clytemnestra comes to where Cassandra is, and she's like, "You should go to sleep." Like, in the middle of the night, she's like, "Sleep, whatever, rest, you need it. You've been through a lot." And Cassandra, like, kind of tells her she knows she's going to kill her. And they're like, they have a moment where they kind of talk about how much they hate Agamemnon. And then they both fall asleep next to each other, which is really sweet.
Nice that they got a chance to bond before.
I do think the only
brutal murder.
This is my personal opinion, but I think Clytemnestra killed Cassandra out of pity, not out of jealousy. Obviously, she killed Agamemnon out of revenge and vengeance of her daughter, but not I don't feel she killed Cassandra out of rage or anything.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Unless the gods have asked you to specifically kill your family member, it's not allowed. So Clytemnestra's killed Agamemnon, who was her husband. This is a big no-no. She's also got a lover. Big no-no. There's misogyny and all that. So Electra, the daughter. This whole family is crazy. And basically, Clytemnestra's in the house. She's like, haha, I'm the queen now. Me and my lover are king and queen, which I don't blame her whatsoever. She goes a bit mad. She basically pulls a bit of a Lady Macbeth. And basically, they're in the throne room, and Electra goes to her dad's tomb because she's mourning her dad and all that. Like, my older sister got murdered, my dad came home, my dad got murdered, my mum murdered my dad murdered my sister, my brother's been sent into exile. That wasn't really important, but like it will be important in a minute. Oh my god, my voice. Oh, okay. And basically what happens is Electra's like, when she goes to the tomb, her brother's there and he's left exile or something, and Electra convinces him that they have to kill Clytemnestra because Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon, Agamemnon killed Iphigenia, all that lovely stuff. So Electra and Orestes plan to kill the murders. Orestes kills Clytemnestra's lover. He dies. No one really cares about that. No, he's not his blood relative. The gods are like, okay, it's fine. And then he kills his mom. In the throne room, his gay lover's also there. I don't know why. When he kills his mum, his gay lover's there, like, chanting him on in the background. Like, woo, you can kill your mum!
No. What? Yeah. No, is that allowed? What? How are the gods viewing that?
And then Athena's like, right, we can't do that. No, not Athena. What am I on about? Apollo is like, we can't do that. And Electra also, like, she planned the killings. She didn't kill her mum and her mum's lover, but like, she planned it. She helped. So technically she should be in trouble as well, but like, she kind of just disappears after this. Like, she full on just disappears off the face of the earth. Like, we never hear what happens to her. She just disappears. Orestes, on the other hand, gets chased by the Furies, which are like ancient Greek demons. There's like 3 ancient Greek demons who like will rip you to shreds and chase you around until you turn mad, basically. And they chase him all the way to Athens, which is a long way, by the way. Mycenae and Athens are very far away. He runs all the way there, being chased by these 3 demons, because he doesn't want to get his eyes clawed out or whatever. And when they get to Athens, he like prays to Athena again, and because Athena's honouring woman or whatever, she's like, fine, I'll help you. And then there's this whole court system where basically they just establish democracy, is basically what happens. This is the first explanation of democracy. This is where we get the idea of democracy from. They have a court.
Oh, cool.
Orestes basically gets he pleads not guilty because Apollo, I believe, is his defendant, and he's like, Orestes didn't do anything, he only killed his mum. His mum's a woman. It's not bad. Athena is like, alright, okay, that's fine. And essentially, the Furies just become, like, witnesses. Like, you know in court you have, like, a jury? the Furies go from these terrifying demons that will eat you to basically being the Athenian legal system, essentially. Obviously.
Well, obviously.
And then there's like more stories of the Furies being basically just judge and jury for the rest of time or whatever. Orestes, I can't remember what actually happens to him. I'm sure there's an ending to his story, but I've completely forgotten. And then Electra's never heard from ever again. She kind of just disappeared. So yeah, that's everything. That was a lot.
Gee, that was. So, who are we hand-picking out?
Cassandra, Iphigenia, Electra, and Clytemnestra.
Nice, yeah. So I do have like some questions, because and I think just to like cover, all of them. So, I'm trying to just think about. So I'm gonna go back to my original. So like what? I'm just trying to think about how to word this because obviously it's talking about quite a few people. But what do you think is like most? I've written interesting here, but what I mean is kind of like what's drawn you to this story, and like why have you chosen these this story sort of
I think
to tell
because
this podcast?
It's not refreshing, but it kind of is refreshing at the same time compared to the rest of the Trojan War, because obviously a lot of the Iliad and a lot of stuff surrounding the Trojan War is a lot about the soldiers and the kings, and obviously these stories don't really follow the kings that much. Obviously Agamemnon is a central character, but he's always going to be a central character when talking about the Iliad anyway. But I just like that it explores the idea of motherhood, like being a daughter, and like it just is very family centric, and it feels like basic family problems just amplified to be Greek tragedies. So it's like you have favourite child, you
definitely.
have
I think
affairs, like all that simple stuff just amplified.
Yeah, like I feel like it's almost a different way of telling telling the story of the end of the war, you know, because like whilst these aren't connected, as you said, to like the soldiers and the kings necessarily, like these still had like significant impacts on the whole thing, you know. Like Cassandra definitely sticks out to me as like she was like big bitch, not in a bad light. She's like the bad bitch, you know, like she knew what was gonna happen and no one listened to her, and that is Apollo's fault, but like I see what you mean. So this sort of leads into my next question: is in your opinion, how has history treated these women? Oh, this is such a good
question, especially for Clytemnestra, because when you learn about this story in classic school or in like if you go to uni and you study this, you learn that Clytemnestra was a villain. Like she was this vengeful, shrewish wife that wanted revenge and was jealous of her husband's concubine, and I don't believe that whatsoever. I 100% believe her daughter was literally murdered for this war that she didn't care about whatsoever. The war started because of her sister. This is going to be a big source of trauma and like angst for this woman. She's just lost her eldest daughter, her favourite daughter as well, which is one of the reasons Electra doesn't like Clytemnestra in the first place, is because Clytemnestra is always like, I wish it would have been Electra instead. I wish they would have got rid of Electra. And Clytemnestra just, like, she takes all her hurt out on her daughter, which eventually leads to Electra killing Clytemnestra. And then Electra is seen as a villain, even though she's the product of her mother's grief, and Clytemnestra is the product of Agamemnon's sacrifice or whatever. And yeah,
his crime.
And Agamemnon's seen as this big hero who wins the war, but no, he's just a greedy king who killed his daughter, couldn't keep it in his pants, and didn't listen to Cassandra. So he's just another man in the Iliad who's just stupid, basically.
Yeah. And I think this just goes back to sort of what we were saying in episode 1, is history is written by the winners.
So obviously they're going to paint Agamemnon in this godly king way who got everything. Yep.
And he's a man, you know? Like, at the end of the day, he's the man of the story. He's the one who... would you say, obviously, sort of just like a sort of side note, like, how often are these women referenced in the Iliad and stuff, like, how... Almost like, are they a main character? Are they a second character? Are they a background character? Do you get...
All of them, like all of the females.
What standing do they have? Yeah, just like what standing do they have in the story? Like, are they recognised in sort of the why they, or are they only recognised in like if you go in like
you
into
have
detail?
To go quite into detail to know their stories. Clytemnestra is mentioned a couple of times as the wife of Agamemnon. He even says like she's first mentioned in book 1 of the Iliad, and Agamemnon goes, he's talking about Chryses, and he says Chryses is far more beautiful than my wife Clytemnestra. Why would I give her up? And it's like, you're such an asshole. This is after he's killed Iphigenia as well. So he's just got no remorse whatsoever. He doesn't care. Iphigenia is mentioned, I think, a couple of times. Clytemnestra is mentioned as the most beautiful daughter of Troy. She's also mentioned when Hector's being dragged by Achilles, as she's watching from the walls of Troy. Electra isn't in the Iliad whatsoever. She's a character created by the guy who wrote Agamemnon, which is not a theatre production. Like, it would be a theatre production now, but back then it would have been like a Greek tragedy. She's created for that purpose. Clytemnestra is obviously mentioned in the Iliad, so she's probably Homer's character, if Homer even existed, but that's a whole nother story. And Cassandra, she's mentioned a couple of times, but Agamemnon's in it too much. Jesus Christ, he's in nearly every book.
Well, my next, this sort of question links onto that. So you kind of answered, but if there's anything you want to add, then what impact do you think these women had? Like, just broadly, because obviously you've sort of explained it. But... particularly
on literature and the tropes that female characters take. I think Clytemnestra is one of the first, not like it would be described as a girl boss type thing. Like, I feel like characters like Natasha, Romanov, Lady Macbeth, I'm trying to think of other people, fit into her character type. And obviously she would have been one of the original characters for such things, because obviously this is the beginning of literature, this is the beginning of writing. Obviously these type of stories, this is one of the first stories where you get this idea of vengeance, which shows up a lot throughout media, which you obviously know about because you're a fancy media student. And I also, one of my favourite things about this is I feel like Electra is really, like, she's not looked at as much as the rest of the characters are that I talked about. Because...
I'm
because
glad you picked
she's
her
one of my
out,
favourites in all of mythology, because she's frequently been told by her mother, you know, it should have been you. You should have been the one to be sacrificed instead of Iphigenia. I would have preferred it to be you. And that is something I feel like a lot of, not obviously girls can't relate to in the sense that their older sister got murdered by their father. I mean in the sense that she's not the favourite child, like you can kind of relate to that. She's also an older sister. She's frequently protecting her brother, like in other tragedies, which I didn't go into because it's different plot lines, which I can't talk about. I don't have enough time. But yeah, she's almost this figure that's taken on the role of her mother, and when her mother kills her father, she becomes this idea of vengeance in this innocent way that she wants to protect herself, kind of, basically. Yeah. Oh my god,
Yeah.
my voice.
Yeah. So my final question is, the question is, are these women inspirational? But I'm going to sort of tweak it. But it's like, is there something that you see in these women that sort of influences you, and sort of like you believe that what message we should take away from these women's stories, I guess, and are they inspirational in any way?
100%. I want to talk about Cassandra a lot because one thing I really liked about Cassandra as a character is she never actually stopped telling the prophecies. Even when her parents locked her away and the whole war was going on, no one believed her. But yet she continued despite that, because she so desperately wanted to save her people, save her family. I was reading this article about Cassandra that she's kind of, the Me Too movement? Yeah, like, she's kind of one of these figures that you can look at and kind of say that, like, she's one of the ancient figures that would have inspired a movement like that, if you understand what I'm trying to say. Because, like, she's
I understand.
cursed by a man, god, person, thing. I can't speak.
Because she stood up for herself, essentially.
And
yeah,
she wasn't believed, basically. And I think that's very prominent in females today. And she never stopped. She never stopped up until her death. She never stopped relaying prophecies. She always hoped someone would believe her, even though she knew no one could believe her. She desperately hoped people would. Another character I think is really inspirational is actually Iphigenia, because this is, it again varies on sources. Apparently before she died, she said, right, it's okay, you can kill me, it's fine. If you so desperately need to win the war, just do it. I don't want to die struggling. I don't want to die being unhappy. There's no point in doing that. I might as well just let you do it. Which is something I find, like, not heart. Like, it is heartbreaking that she let her father do that. And I think she did. She probably did it because she saw he wouldn't step down for his pride, and she wasn't worth as much as his dignity was, and she understood that, and she could understand that. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. These are like very strong women, I think. Definitely. I've taken away from this. Like Cassandra, that idea, I think that resonates, like that not being believed. I think that definitely resonates with many women today. And but she kept fighting, even sort of when everyone had betrayed her, when she'd lost everything. You know, she was a slave, and she kept fighting, and she sort of accepted this punishment, the punishment she received for standing up for herself and saying no. And I think that's definitely a very powerful, and obviously, again, with the sacrifice, she was like, you know what, they're gonna make me do this. I'm going to go down with my head held high.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think that was really.
I literally just spoke so much for like 45 minutes straight. My voice is gonna die.
You did really well. Do you have any, because we're sort of getting towards our hour mark, but do you have any like sort of final wrapping up points you want to make? Because those are all my questions.
I just want to like say, like, I feel like these people in, like, these characters specifically, like the women who, not just these characters, but like a lot of the women in the Trojan War are overlooked, probably because they are women. They didn't like do the whole fighting thing. They didn't fight the battles. They weren't like they went Achilles, which annoys me a lot because people only want to talk about Achilles all the time. It's so annoying to me that when people talk about the Trojan War, this is probably a lot to do with the Song of Achilles. People only want to talk about, it's so
and the
annoying
film
to me, Achilles and Patroclus, or just Achilles in general. Like, it's all people want to talk about.
The film
the
as well
focuses on Achilles. It's like, yeah, he kind of is the main character in the Iliad, but when you look at the perspective of the war for the 10 years and after and before it, Achilles is basically irrelevant, essentially.
Okay, so hear me out. Kind of, this is a weird analogy, but it's almost like he's Iron Man or Captain America in
basically.
Like, he's the main character, but there's a whole load of other crap going on at the same time.
It's so annoying, like, especially because, like, they're men. Like, this sounds bad, but, like, when people talk about the Trojan War, they talk about the men, and they talk about Odysseus because of the Odyssey, and they talk about Achilles because of the Song of Achilles and all that. But, like, these characters wouldn't even be in a war without the goddesses. They don't talk about Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, who play such key roles in the Iliad. They don't talk about Eris, who started the whole war with the golden apple, because she didn't get invited to a wedding. She was like, I'm petty. They don't, even people don't really talk about Helen. And, like, if Helen didn't exist, there would be no war. And, like, Helen and Clytemnestra, I didn't say this before, but they were born from eggs. Like, not embryos. Eggs. Like, duck eggs. Like, it's, and no one talks about this. They just talk about Achilles. He had a boyfriend. Everyone loves that. I don't know why. And even when they do talk about Achilles, they're like, they don't even talk about the fact that he dragged Hector around Troy like 14 times. They're like, ooh.
Yeah. They paint him as the massive hero, you know? Is there, like, obviously there's the Song of Achilles, which is a fiction book about the Trojan War and the Iliad and everything. Are there any, like, books that you could like recommend that maybe focus on women?
So let me look at my bookshelf quickly, because I have a whole shelf. Obviously, if you want to read basics, you can read Percy Jackson and that stuff, because they're mentioned briefly. If you just want to have an easy read, Percy Jackson's a good one. It's not very accurate, but you know. Trials of Apollo, also in the Percy Jackson universe. Troy by Stephen Fry. Haven't finished it yet. I'm starting it. I got your special copy, which I'm so grateful for. But yeah, that's a good one. Stephen Fry always writes his female characters really well. Like, I love the way he talks about Hera specifically. Like, I'm gonna read the whole trilogy. Like, the whole Stephen Fry mythology trilogy is absolutely phenomenal. The best book for this subject, like the women of the Trojan War, would probably be 1,000 Ships. It's from the perspective of the majority of the females in the Trojan War, and it's so good. I love Natalie Haynes so much. Like, her writing is amazing. She also just came out with a new book called Pandora's Jar, which I haven't read yet, but from the reviews is really good.
That's definitely one I'm going to have to read then. We'll link these books.
But also, in our if you look at my TikTok or my Instagram, I put them both on there. I have book recommendations on a video that I posted, which is what I used for research for this. So if you want to just like refresh the brain of what I've said here, The Greek Myths by Robert Graves, which is another book set you gave me. That's also really good. It talks about the Trojan War.
Yeah.
In quite detail in the second part. The Trojan Women by Eurepides, which is an old Greek tragedy. It's still really good. Eurepides was a raging misogynist, but somehow he managed to write such an amazing tragedy about women. I don't know how. He's a bit crazy as well. What else? I'm trying to think. They're on my bookshelf, but I can't read for some reason. The Iliad, obviously. They don't mention them that much, but like if you're interested in this stuff, read the Iliad. I hate to say it, Song of Achilles. I don't really like.
Yeah, because it does it does look in a little bit to
quite a bit.
A couple of them.
Yeah, but
yeah,
I just don't like the Song of Achilles that much, mainly because I don't really like Achilles and Patroclus' story compared to the rest. We can do an episode of that. I can't see my bookshelf.
That'll be the title.
Let me look.
Yeah, and
a really good one. Like this is so good. It's called The House of Names. It's by an Irish writer. I can't pronounce his name. It's about Agamemnon, Iphigenia, Electra, and Orestes. So that one's really good. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I tell you what, we should probably just make like
definitely.
a massive book list anyway. You know, just all books that
we can create a highlight
that we think
on
you guys should read.
Instagram.
Yeah, we could do. And if there's any books that you guys would be interested in seeing, then let us know. But yeah, I feel like now's a good point to wrap up, because this has been really interesting, and I've learned a lot. Because it's not like with Julia the Elder in our first episode. I did have quite a fair bit of background knowledge on the Trojan War, because I read the Song of Achilles and I've seen stuff about the Iliad because you
were with me when I read it.
But I wasn't familiar 100% with the story. But I thought that was really good.
Thank you.
It was a really interesting topic, and I think definitely.
I just said I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Sorry, what was that? I missed that. Yeah, and I think it definitely links in with our sort of theme about inspirational women and International Women's Day. And yeah, so we will leave links below for like more information so you can read a little bit further on, like we did in our last episode. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As usual, we stream on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. They'll all be linked below depending on what platform you're listening to this on. If you're feeling nice, please drop us a like or maybe a comment. Let us know your thoughts. You can check us out on Instagram, where we post regular updates, sneak peeks, all the promo, all the good stuff to learn more. We also have sort of discussions over there, and we ask questions and talk to you guys, and just really we'd love to hear from you. I mentioned this in the last podcast, but we want to know your thoughts. Feel free to DM us if you have any suggestions about what podcasts we could do, and we'll definitely get on them. But
I really hope you enjoyed.
I definitely did.
I just spoke for
Maria
55 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We did a very good job. So
thank
you guys so much for watching.
Bye.
And we'll see you later. Bye.